developing leaders in our online learning field, and especially through something OLC does called the OLC Leadership Network. So I thought we might talk about that a little bit. Is that okay?
That's great.
Yeah, that's great. So what is it?
I'll start.
Okay.
And I'll just say it is, it's an opportunity for leaders, online learning leaders across higher education, to have a place where they can connect with each other, meet their peers, colleagues in the field. We have events that complement the OLC conferences, where leaders that are probably coming to the conference can also, but create this opportunity where they can connect with each other. I will have always said that it's been just tremendously valuable, over the past 20 plus years to have, a colleague like my friend Peter that I can connect with, ask questions of. As a point person for our institution, it's really great to be able to connect with Peter, ask questions. How are you handling this situation? How are you responding to this situation? So now, so to amplify that idea to an event where leaders can connect with each other, it's almost like it's less about the topics that we cover in the agenda, but those opportunities to network with each other. And that's really what the Leadership Network is about.
Yeah, if you stop and think about it, there's a person on point at many institutions today, and Eric's done some studies on this, who's leading the online learning initiative, sort of like a chief online learning officer, the senior person. And getting those people together is really a great opportunity. So for example, I'm an associate provost for online learning at the University of Albany in the SUNY system. And yesterday we had the Leadership Network event, and I probably met a half dozen people with almost exactly the same title that I have. And I can tell you, it really is an opportunity to talk to folks and say, hey, we're struggling with this issue or that issue, or this is on the horizon for us. What are you guys doing? And really some just great conversations that can come out of that opportunity for collaborating. Yeah, we're doing what you guys are thinking about doing, this coming year, and this is how it's going. These are some things that have tripped us up. These are things to watch out for. And so that sort of informal kind of conversation is one of the huge benefits of it. But there's also formal presentations on issues that are, really germane relevant to the work that we're all doing.
Yeah. It's good. And then those conversations don't end at that event then, right? So the opportunity here is building that community of leaders that can stay connected well after the Leadership Network event is over, and hopefully reconnect at the next Leadership Network event.
So if I understand that correctly, then the way this works is at each of the formal OLC conferences, Accelerate and Innovate, twice a year, there is an associated offering, a meeting of the OLC Leadership Network. And so folks might be coming again and again and again, or might be coming for the first time, whatever, they get connected. And then after those events or in between those events, they can stay in touch informally.
That's absolutely right. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that while some leaders have been in place for many years, the research that I did actually identified that we have so many leaders. The vast majority of leaders in our U.S. universities have Only been in place for 5 or 6 years or less.
Which is really staggering, right?
This is a new field and a new position for many people. And so, again, it's good, hopefully good timing and a good support for them to have this opportunity.
Shameless plug here. I don't think Eric will mind, and maybe Peter will indulge us. So Eric was a guest on Topcast, the Teaching Online podcast that one of our online participants this morning brought up, so I don't mind bringing it up again. And Eric talked about the first in a series of 2 studies thus far of online learning leaders. And so if you Google Topcast and online learning leaders, you'll find it. The 30-minute episode, most of that is an interview between my UCF colleague, Tom Cavanaugh, and Eric, talking about the findings from the first study and a little bit of the second study. First study's been published, the second study is still in press.
As soon as I can get out of this room, I'll keep working on that second journal article.
First study is of
just so people know, the first study was actually published in the Online Learning Journal,
That's
which
right.
is the scholarly journal for the Online Learning Consortium.
Yep.
One of the top
Good plug.
downloads for the year.
Is that right?
A lot of interest in this topic. So
that's awesome.
I encourage people to go onto Online Learning Consortium's website, go to the Read tab, and you'll find the Online Learning Journal there, and you can find and read that article for free.
Yeah.
That is true.
Some of those downloads were other people beyond those in my family too.
A couple.
A couple.
Yeah, you can look at your extended family and see if they're all the IP addresses are in Sweden, and go from there. No, that's great. And if I remember correctly, Eric, the first study is of U.S. 4-year institutions. Second study is of 2-year institutions.
Pretty much. It was the R1, R2, R3, M1, M2, M3 institutions in the first study, and then it was our 2-year schools in the second study.
Gotcha. There you go. So it's I found it fascinating. I mean, just that little factoid that you teased us with, of that the majority, over 50% of respondents have been in this senior online learning leader role for 5 years or less.
Yeah, right.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
You know, potentially related to that, it was the fact that almost 3/4 of those institutions are using this as a catalyst for organizational changes too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was
Right.
it. You really ought to read the first study.
So
it's
a
good.
message that this is a dynamic field.
For sure.
And again, maybe it's another good reason to have this opportunity to connect with others in like positions.
So what have you seen thus far? So if I've done my math right, I think the first one of these meetings that you did was in the fall of 2016.
Mhm.
So yesterday was the 4th of these, maybe?
Okay. Third?
Fall 16,
Fourth, maybe third or fourth.
spring
Yeah.
2017, fall 2017, spring 2018. I don't know. You did one each time. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
it could be.
3, 4 of these. So what have you seen along the way? Any trend, any evolution? How have things changed in what you're doing and how you're doing it? Anything you've observed in terms of who's coming, and is it the same people again and again? Any of that?
I think we're getting a mix of people, newcomers and people who are returning. And the format has been to tee up some of the big topics that people are, likely to be confronting, and to bring in leaders in the field who can speak to those topics. But there's also been a designed opportunity for a breakout session, so that in addition to hearing some brief presentations, some kind of overview remarks, folks get to go back and really sit down and talk about what's happening in their particular context. What are they struggling with? And hear from others who are struggling or who have already dealt with these challenges. And it creates this sort of very broad, very rich dialogue that I think is really helpful for folks who are, especially folks kind of new to this area,
Right.
who may need to have a, reality check, touchstone, whatever you want to call it, with other folks who are struggling. We talked about things like faculty development. We talked about, big items like funding, resource models,
Research initiatives,
initiatives,
innovation.
online program management, successes and failures. And so there's just been a tremendous set of themes that really, really, I think, are beneficial.
Other thoughts add into there?
I really think it's great to have those sort of vital topics for us to talk about, and some of those were even informed from the research that we did, and at least the first couple, to say here are the issues that are really on the minds of these leaders. But I also find just such great value in the opportunities to rub elbows with the colleagues and meet new people, and have this opportunity for people to connect with each other.
But it sounds like, if I understand this right, that you've made an effort to really scaffold the substantive interpersonal relationships and kind of fast track that dialogue, right? As opposed to just having a mixer and you rub elbows and that's about it, or you sit and you're all in the same place listening to the same person. Here you're really fostering interaction and shared ideas.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think that's been the plan, and to recognize that you've got a group of emerging leaders who are really looking at very similar issues in different contexts, and to be able to come together and say, okay, for us just now, we're considering new funding resource models for expanding online learning, for developing new programs, for growing enrollments, especially at graduate level. And I think a lot of public institutions have seen enrollment challenges, for example, especially in graduate programs. Schools of ed, for example, are struggling. There's other areas. So we're looking around saying, okay, how are we going to, and in a time of sort of fiscal constraint, continue to grow programs, continue to attract new enrollments? And boy, when you get down to it, there is just some really good stories to hear and good stories to share from other institutions who are dealing with sort of the same issues. And right down to, we've tried online program management firms. Here was our story. Here's, some sticking points. One great presentation yesterday was from the University of Florida. They had a very large contract. And, some of it worked well, some of it didn't work so well. And just some great tips for, if you're thinking about doing this, we learned these things, and here's what you really want to consider as you're setting these
very practical, high level.
Yeah, both the big picture, but some very small, very helpful details as well. So when you're thinking, okay, we're going to go down this road, now we know, make sure there's key performance indicators in this contract, for example, so that when it comes down to year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's, these contracts typically can be up to 7, 8, 10 years.
Yeah, right.
You want to know what to watch out for. So, I mean, that's just one example of one theme with a lot of deep kind of dive in it and some very helpful practical tips.
Yeah. That's awesome. One of you said emerging leaders, and if I'm not mistaken, you don't limit attendance at the OLC Leadership Network events to the chief online learning officer, and there are more senior roles who show up, but you have a little bit more of a diverse group there. Is that a deliberate effort to begin to cultivate kind of the next wave of leaders, or?
Hopefully that's helpful. Yes. I would say that there is there's certainly OLC for many, many years has had this track of it's an incredible acronym. It's IELOL.
Yes.
So it's the Institute for Emerging Leaders of Online Learning.
That's
kind of rolls right off the tongue.
That's right. A lot of vowels.
But the idea that it does come back to my point about some of these positions, so Peter and I have been in roles for many years, and we did find that in the 2-year schools, many of those leaders have been in place for many years too. But you also, in both cases and in both studies, you end up with people that this may be something they've started just in the last year or two, and so you almost by definition or automatically get a mix of people with varying levels of years of experience in this role. And we should welcome all of those.
Yeah. And as Eric mentions, we've been doing this since the 1990s. So for some of us, it's not new. We've done things like develop research initiatives to try to assess and understand how are our efforts working, and to even develop research models. And so one of the themes that we've discussed in the past is developing a research agenda for your institution and who to bring to the table, how to set that up. And those discussions kind of help folks to think about the role in a more expansive way and to understand there's not only an opportunity to understand what's happening at my specific institution, but potentially to contribute to the literature in online teaching and learning. And so there's been some great talks about that as well.
Yeah, it's almost like it's making that connection between concept or theory to practice, right? And so how you think about operationalizing some good ideas.
That's good. So you've mentioned IELOL as a good on-ramp for would-be online learning leaders. Any other suggestions? Obviously, OLC offers a lot of resources through the conferences, the journal, and various workshops and offerings. But anything insider pro tip guided direction if you were going to give a would-be leader some career advice on how to get to that position of influence, what would you say?
I think I would admit some, that this influenced my study in terms of I was curious and interested in the types of experiences, the various types of experiences that leaders have in this role. And that's why I was specifically asking about whether individuals had face-to-face teaching experiences, online teaching experiences. Did they have any experience with instructional design and curriculum development, overall management and leadership? Did they have even educational research experience and even IT experience? And so it's a general way of trying to respond to your question in terms of at least my own experience is that I think that combination or that blend of experiences has been at least valuable, extremely valuable, maybe even essential in my mind in terms of being successful in these kind of roles.
Varied experiences. Peter?
Yeah. I think I'd piggyback on what Eric's saying is that it's important for these folks to understand the various components of a college, of an institution, their own institution, to realize that online learning touches every facet of the higher education experience, from students' admissions experiences to online student support, faculty development, resource models. So a broad and varied set of experiences is crucial to facilitating understanding of this leadership role. And again, I think that's a really big part of what the Leadership Network is meant to reinforce, that this is, in some ways a complex leadership role, one that has, I work in this role and we collaborate across many, many units in the university, from the academic departments, all of the deans, to student support, to faculty development, to, the registrar, to bookstore. There are just so many different pieces. So understanding and becoming increasingly able to do this kind of role, to provide this kind of leadership, it's contingent upon getting a broad perspective. And I think that's really what the Leadership Network's facilitating.
Terminal degree?
I don't think it hurts to have a PhD. It kind of gives you the credentials to be able, the street cred, to be able to go and talk to faculty and say, hey, I've done this, I understand. I understand that you may have some resistance to this idea. And understanding and having taught online can be another great, background. So they have the credibility to say, I've done this. And, I know you may not know whether it will work, or may have some misunderstandings about if it works. But I can tell you that it does work because I've done it. Also knowing that the research on this is very clear that it does work. That there's been dozens of meta-analyses that find this does work. And the big issue is how to design it to work, not whether it can work.
That's right.
But having that, again, having that community to situate yourself in, to understand there are other people struggling with the same things, or other people grappling with these same issues, really is the way forward, I think, in almost any career, is to be able to plug into a good, strong community. So that's what we're trying to do with the Leadership Network.
That's great. So it sounds like if you are currently the senior-most online learning leader at your institution, hey, you should be watching for these meetings with the Online Learning Consortium Leadership Network. Or if you are a terminally degreed, current practicing instructional designer or online teacher who has a bunch of varied experiences and you're wondering, how do I go to that next level? Maybe you want to sign up and come to the Leadership Network events as well and see maybe if this feels like your tribe or not, perhaps. So, hey, Peter and Eric, thanks very much for coming and joining us here in our inaugural OLC Live sessions. First day of our inaugural offering of OLC Live, and it's a nice little experiment, but this is a great moment here where we're talking to you guys about some important topics. So I'm hoping that...
Thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity, and maybe we'll see some friends out there to come to the OLC Leadership Network, which will be in November in Orlando at OLC Accelerate.
Swan and Dolphin.
Swan and Dolphin.
All right. That's awesome. Thanks you guys very much.
Thank you, Kelvin.
And we'll be back in just a few minutes to do a little bit of a reflection on this first day of OLC Live and give you some highlights on tomorrow and Friday's events. So we're going to take a brief break for just a couple of minutes, and then we'll be right back at it. Go ahead and make some chat comments, questions, comments if you want, and we'll be back to address those in just a moment.